They said it was impossible. They said the weather was too violent, the valley too deep, and the enemy too numerous. On a frozen peak in Afghanistan, a SEAL team accepted their death. They had written their goodbye letters. But they forgot one thing. The sky didn't belong to the enemy. It belonged to a pilot who refused to abandon her sister on the ground. This is the story of how the Devil of Kunar met the Angel of Death. The Kunar province doesn't just kill you, it erases you. The mountains are teeth, jagged granite fangs that chew up radio signals and spit out helicopters. It was November 2023, Operation Obsidian Dagger. The objective was a high-value target, HVT, named Ismail al-Zarani, a ghost of a bomb maker hiding in a fortified compound halfway up the Shuriak Valley. The intel was solid. The timeline was tight. The team was Tier 1. But there was an anomaly in the manifest. Walking toward the MH-47 Chinook on the tarmac at Bagram, amidst the bearded giants of SEAL Team 6, Devgru, was Chief Petty Officer Sarah St. Miller. She wasn't just a cultural support team, CST member, attached for searches. She was an experiment, an anomaly. Through a classified pipeline that didn't technically exist on paper, Miller had passed the selection. She was lethal, silent, and carried a suppressed HK-416, just like the men flanking her. Leading the squad was Master Chief Jason Breaker Hayes, a man carved out of oak with 15 deployments and a skepticism about Miller that he didn't bother to hide. "Check your corners, Saint," Breaker had grunted in the briefing room, his eyes hard. "Up there, gender doesn't matter. The altitude kills everyone the same. You lag, we leave you. Clear." "Clear, Master Chief," Sarah replied. Her voice was steady, but inside, the pressure was a hydraulic press. She knew every mistake she made wouldn't just be her mistake. It would be the mistake of every woman who ever wanted to wear the trident. She had to be perfect. The insertion was a nightmare. The Chinook dropped them onto a freezing ridge at 200 hours. The air was thin, smelling of pine resin and impending snow. As the bird lifted off, the silence rushed back in, heavy and oppressive. Movement to target, 2 clicks, whispered Whiskey, the team's point man. They moved like shadows. Sarah felt the burn in her lungs, the thin air struggling to oxygenate her blood, but she kept pace, matching Breaker step for step. The compound sat on a shelf of rock, overlooking a treacherous drop. It was dark, too dark, no sentries, no cooking fires. "Structure looks cold," Sarah whispered over the comms, her night vision scanning the windows. "I don't like it." "Maintain discipline," Breaker snapped. They breached the main door with a quiet hiss of hydraulics. The team flooded the room, lasers sweeping the dust-filled air. Empty. "Clear left! Clear right!" Sarah moved to the center of the room. There was a table. On it sat a single, battery-powered radio, crackling with static. "It's a set-up," Sarah said, the realization hitting her gut like a hammer. "They knew we were coming." Click. The sound wasn't from inside the room. It was from the ridge lines above them. The distinct, metallic clack of a DSHK heavy machine gun being racked. "Ambush, get down!" Breaker roared. The world disintegrated. 3 sides of the valley erupted. It wasn't just small arms. It was a deluge of lead. RPGs shrieked through the night air, slamming into the compound walls, blowing out the mud brick facade. "Man down! I got man down!" screamed Tex, the team's medic. Whiskey had taken shrapnel to the leg in the first volley. "Suppressive fire!" Sarah yelled, mounting her rifle on a window ledge. She squeezed the trigger, sending controlled bursts toward the muzzle flashes in the tree line. But for every round they fired, 100 came back. They were in the kill zone. The Taliban had baited the trap, waited for them to get inside the fatal funnel, and now they were closing the lid. 2 hours. They had been fighting for 2 hours. The compound was half rubble. The air inside was choked with pulverized dust and the copper tang of blood. The situation was catastrophic. Whiskey was bleeding out, the tourniquet barely holding. Breaker had taken a round to his shoulder plate that cracked his ribs. He was fighting through the pain, but his breathing was ragged. Worst of all was the weather. As if the enemy wasn't enough, the Hindu Kush decided to finish the job. A massive winter squall had rolled over the valley peaks. The temperature plummeted to 10 degrees below zero. Snow began to fall, not gentle flakes, but hard, driving ice pellets that cut visibility to zero. Command, this is Spartan 101. The JTAC, Joint Terminal Attack Controller, a lanky guy named Miller, no relation to Sarah, screamed into the radio. We are taking effective fire from 3 quadrants. We are black on ammo. We need immediate KIAS, close air support, or medevac. Over. The radio crackled with the static of the storm. The response from the TOC, Tactical Operations Center, was faint, like a ghost whispering from a grave. Spartan 1-1. Negative on air assets. Weather is 0-0. All birds grounded. No pilots. Cleared to fly in this. You are on your own. Advise you. Break contact. E&E. Break contact. Escape and evade. Breaker looked at Whiskey, who was pale and shivering on the floor. There was no way they were moving him down a vertical cliff face under machine gun fire. We can't move him, Breaker said, his voice low. He looked at his men. These were warriors who had survived the impossible, but the look in their eyes was new. It was resignation. They checked their mags. Sarah had 2 magazines left. Tex had 1. This is it, Breaker said, slumping against the wall. He pulled a photo of his daughter from his pocket, shielding it from the dust. We hold them off as long as we can. Make 'em pay for every inch. The enemy fire was getting closer. They were bounding down the ridges, closing the circle. You could hear their voices now, shouting orders. They knew the Americans were trapped. They knew the Americans were out of ammo. They were coming for the trophies. Sarah looked at the men. She saw the defeat. It wasn't cowardice. It was math. The math said they were dead. But Sarah St. Miller didn't like math. She crawled over to the JTAC, grabbing his radio handset. What are you doing, Saint? Breaker coughed, blood on his lips. Save your battery. I'm not dying in a mud hut, she hissed. She keyed the mic, bypassing the TOSI frequency and switching to the emergency guard frequency, the universal channel for distress. Any station? Any station? Sarah's voice was calm, piercing through the static. This is Spartan 1-1 on the ground in grid Delta Zulu 9er. We are surrounded. We have critical casualties. We are fixing bayonets. If anyone is up there, if anyone can hear this, we need a miracle. Over. Static. Just the howling wind and the cracking of AK-47 rounds chipping away the wall above her head. Give it up, Sarah, Breaker said softly. Nobody flies in a storm like this. It's suicide. She ignored him. She keyed it again. I repeat, this is Spartan 1-1. Is there anyone out there? Silence. Then, through the snow and the static, a sound. Not a voice. A click. Then, a voice. It was female, cool, detached, and sounding like she was sitting on her front porch rather than in a cockpit at 20,000 feet. Spartan 1-1. This is Hog 1-1. Flight of 2 A-10Cs out of Bagram. I hear you loud and clear. What is your situation? Sarah's heart stopped. She looked at Breaker. His eyes went wide. Hog 1-1, Sarah shouted. We are pinned down. Danger close. We have enemy infantry within 50 meters. But the weather. Command said the weather is 0-0. Up in the sky, above the cloud layer, Captain Elena Viper Vance, looked at her fuel gauge. She was running on fumes. She had been on her way back to base when she heard the call. Her wingman clicked in. "Viper, we can't see the ground. The cloud deck is solid from 20,000 down to the deck. If we dive into that soup, we'll slam into a mountain. We have no visibility." Vance looked at her radar. The mountains were everywhere. Diving into that storm was suicide. Protocol said return to base. Logic said return to base. But Vance heard the desperation in Sarah's voice. She heard a sister. "Spartan 1-1, Vance radioed back. "I can't see you. I can't see the mountains. If I come down there, I'm flying blind." On the ground, an RPG blew the door off the room. Dust filled Sarah's lungs. The Taliban were at the perimeter wall. "Hog 1-1, if you don't come down now, there won't be anyone left to save," Sarah screamed. In the cockpit, Vance tightened her oxygen mask. She flipped a switch on her console, arming the A-10 Avenger, the 30mm rotary cannon that was the size of a Volkswagen. "Wingman, stay high. Orbit and act as a relay," Vance ordered. "Viper, you can't do this. You'll crash." "Spartan 1-1, Vance said, her voice dropping an octave, turning into pure steel. "This is Viper. I'm coming down. Keep your heads down. I'm going to need you to talk me in. You are my eyes now." "Copy that, Viper," Sarah said, gripping the radio. She looked at Breaker. "Get ready." Vance pushed the stick forward. The massive A-10 Thunderbolt II, a flying tank nicknamed the Warthog, tipped its nose toward the white abyss of the storm. She plunged into the clouds. Vance's world shrank to the size of her HUD, heads-up display. The A-10 bucked violently. The turbulence inside the storm wasn't just wind, it was a physical beating. The canopy frosted over instantly, ice crystals spiderwebbing across the glass. Her altimeter unwound like a clock in a horror movie. 10,000 feet, 8,000, 5,000. "I can't see the ground," Vance shouted, fighting the stick as the aircraft slammed into an air pocket. "I'm flying on instruments. Talk to me, Saint." On the ground, Sarah was firing her rifle one-handed while holding the radio. The Taliban had breached the outer wall. They were in the courtyard, 30 meters away. "Viper, you are coming in from the south," Sarah screamed over the gunfire. "The valley walls are tight. You have 400 meters of clearance on either side. Trust your vector. Target is marked with, damn it, we have no IR strobes. The cold killed the batteries." No strobes, no lasers. Vance was diving into a pitch-black valley at 300 knots, aiming for a spot she couldn't see, to kill men she couldn't identify, to save a team that was already half dead. "Muzzle flashes," Vance yelled. "I need a visual. Give me something." Breaker crawled over. He grabbed a red flare, their last resort signal. "If I pop this, they'll focus every gun on us." "Do it," Sarah ordered. Breaker ripped the cap and threw the flare into the center of the courtyard. The brilliant red phosphorus light hissed into life, illuminating the swarming enemy soldiers. It also lit up the SEAL's position like a lighthouse. Bullets hammered the wall around them. Sarah ducked as debris sprayed her face. "I see the flare!" Vance shouted. She was at 2,000 feet, screaming out of the clouds like a falling star. "I have the cherry! I'm in! Danger close! Get your heads down!" "Incoming!" Sarah tackled Breaker, covering his body with hers. The sound came first, not the gun but the engines, a high-pitched banshee scream that tore the sky open. The Taliban looked up, their eyes widening in sudden, primal terror. They knew that sound. Then, the noise that ends worlds. "Bro! Dart!" The Goit. Avenger is not a machine gun. It is a hydraulic beast that fires 30mm depleted uranium shells at a rate of 3,900 rounds per minute. The Earth didn't just explode. It liquefied. Vance pulled the trigger for a 2-second burst. A line of fire erupted down the center of the courtyard, walking the rounds straight through the enemy formation. The sound was a chainsaw cutting through the fabric of reality. The concussion wave shook the compound's foundation. Inside the room, dust fell in thick sheets. "Status!" Vance gasped, pulling nearly 9 Gs as she yanked the stick back, barely clearing the jagged peak on the north side of the valley. Her wings groaned under the stress. "Did I hit them?" Silence on the radio. "Spartan 1-1, talk to me." Vance panicked. Had she hit the friendlies? A cough, then a laugh, a dry, ragged laugh. "Target destroyed," Sarah's voice came back, breathless. "Viper, that was beautiful." "You cleared the courtyard, but they're regrouping on the ridge. They're setting up mortars." "I'm coming around," Vance said, her fear replaced by a cold, predatory focus. "I'm Winchester on the gun, out of ammo. I've got 2 MK-82 snake-eye bombs left. Guide me in." "You can't do another pass in this," Sarah warned. "The ceiling is dropping. You'll clip a wing." "I'm not leaving you," Vance said. "Mark the ridge." For the next 10 minutes, the laws of physics were treated as mere suggestions. Captain Elena Vance flew her A-10, not like a plane, but like a scalpel. She dove into ravines that were too narrow for a helicopter. She banked off invisible cliff faces, guided only by Sarah's calm voice and the sheer refusal to let her sister die. She dropped the bombs. 2 earth-shattering thuds echoed through the Hindu Kush. The mortars on the ridge fell silent. Then, the only sound was the wind. "Splash hits," Sarah whispered. "Enemy is breaking contact. They're running. You broke them, Viper. You actually broke them." "Fuel state critical," Vance said, her voice trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. "I have to RTB. Return to base. I'm gliding home." "Copy that, Viper," Sarah said. She looked at Breaker. The Master Chief was staring at the radio in Sarah's hand, then up at the dark sky, tears of pain and disbelief in his eyes. "Viper," Sarah added, her voice cracking. "Thank you. Any time, Saint. See you at the bar. Drinks are on the Navy." The flight back to Bagram was a fugue state of vibration and exhaustion. Inside the belly of the rescue Chinook, the adrenaline that had sustained Sarah for 6 hours finally evaporated, leaving behind a bone-deep ache. The interior of the helicopter was bathed in a dim red tactical light. Across from her, Tex was working frantically on whiskey, hanging a fresh bag of plasma from the ceiling webbing. Master Chief Jason Breaker Hayes sat near the ramp. He wasn't looking at his men. He was staring at the floor, his head resting in his hands. Every few seconds, he would look up, catch Sarah's eye, and then look away. The hierarchy of the team, the unspoken rules that had governed them for years, had been shattered on that mountain. They were alive because of 2 things, a radio and the woman holding it. When the wheels touched down at Bagram Airfield, the sun was just cresting the Hindu Kush, painting the snow-capped peaks in a deceptive, peaceful pink. The ramp lowered with a hydraulic whine, letting in the smell of jet fuel and freezing mud. Medical teams swarmed the bird immediately, rushing whiskey onto a gurney. Sarah stood up, her legs trembling. She stepped off the ramp, her boots hitting the tarmac. She expected to walk to the debriefing room, to disappear into the anonymity of the base. But the flight line was not empty. 100 yards away, ground crews were gathered around a hardened aircraft shelter. A tow truck was dragging a beast into the hangar. It was the A-10, Hog 101. Sarah walked toward it, drawn by a magnetic pull. As she got closer, the sheer violence of the night became visible. The aircraft looked like it had gone 10 rounds with a shredder. The grey paint was stripped from the nose cone by the ice storm. The right wing was riddled with holes where the Taliban anti-aircraft fire had tried to swat it from the sky. One of the elevators on the tail was hanging by a thread. It shouldn't have been able to fly. It certainly shouldn't have been able to land. A ladder hooked over the side of the cockpit. Slowly, a figure climbed down. Captain Eleanor Viper Vance looked nothing like the angel of death she had been on the radio. Standing on the tarmac, she looked small. She pulled off her helmet, revealing hair matted with sweat. Her flight suit was soaked. Her hands, resting on the ladder, were shaking uncontrollably, the aftershocks of flying a 30-ton metal bathtub through a blender. Sarah stopped 10 feet away. The noise of the bass faded. Vance looked up. Her eyes were rimmed with red, dark circles carved deep underneath them. She saw the dirty, blood-streaked woman standing before her. The voice from the radio. "Saint?" Vance asked, her voice raspy. "Viper," Sarah replied. For a moment, neither moved. The gap between the Air Force and the Navy, between the sky and the ground, vanished. Then, heavy footsteps crunched on the gravel behind Sarah. It was Breaker. His arm was in a sling, his face caked in dried mud. He limped past Sarah and stood directly in front of the pilot. The gathered ground crew went silent. A Master Chief from DevGru does not usually pay respects to regular officers. Breaker looked at the destroyed plane, then at Vance. "You violated 36 safety regulations up there, Captain," Breaker growled. Vance straightened her back, though she looked ready to collapse. "I didn't file a flight plan, Master Chief. You can report me to the CAG if you want." Breaker stared at her. Then, slowly, the granite of his face cracked. A genuine, weary smile broke through. "Report you?" Breaker scoffed. "I'm going to recommend you for the Air Force Cross. If the Air Force is too stupid to give it to you, I'll pin a trident on you myself." He turned around to face Sarah. This was the moment Sarah had been fighting for since she first shaved her head for selection. Breaker didn't say anything at first. He reached up to his shoulder Velcro and ripped off the squadron patch, the Crusaders' Cross. He stepped forward and pressed it firmly onto Sarah's tactical vest, right over her heart. "I told you that you'd slow us down," Breaker said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was wrong. You didn't just keep up, Chief Miller. You led." He paused, looking at the rest of the weary team gathering behind them. "From now on, you don't walk behind me. You walk beside me." Sarah touched the patch, a lump forming in her throat. "Hooyah, Master Chief." "Now," Breaker announced, turning to the group, "I believe I promised to buy the entire base a drink." Hours later, the adrenaline had finally faded, replaced by the numb comfort of survival. The base bar, a plywood shack smelling of stale popcorn and cheap lager, was packed. In the back corner, away from the noise of the celebrating SEALs, Sarah and Vance sat in a booth. A pitcher of beer sat between them. They were two anomalies, a woman who kicked down doors and a woman who flew tanks. "They told me to turn back, you know," Vance said quietly, tracing the condensation on her glass. "The tower, my wingman. They said the valley was a coffin." "Why didn't you?" Sarah asked. Vance looked up, her eyes locking with Sarah's. "Because I heard your voice, and I knew that if I turned back, I'd be safe. But I'd never be able to look at myself in the mirror again." Sarah raised her glass. "To bad weather?" Vance clinked her glass against it, a tired smile playing on her lips. "And to ignoring orders." Outside, the wind howled off the mountains of the Hindu Kush, screaming through the valleys where they had almost died. But inside it was warm. They had walked into the fire, and against all odds, they had walked back out together. They told us that biology dictates destiny. They told us that nature decides who survives. But in the Shuriak Valley, Sarah Miller and Elena Vance proved that the only thing that matters is the will to fight. Not for glory, but for the person standing next to you. When the world says, "Give up," the warrior whispers back, "Try and make me." If this story fired you up, don't just leave. Hit that like button to honor the warriors who defy the odds every day. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of true grit. And tell me in the comments, what is the biggest storm you've ever had to face? I'll see you in the next one.